Hey guys, and welcome to the WeChat Tech podcast. Today I have Brian Bensky with me. Is that how I say it, Brian?
That's it. You got it. Thanks, Ben.
Perfect. Well, yeah, good to have you on, Brian. I think first step of the podcast normally is introduction from your side, the guest side. So, yeah, would you like to sort of give a quick intro?
Sure. Um, I'm Brian. I live in Colorado, about an hour north of Denver. Currently running DevOps for a small startup called Move.ai that's in the uh, data space for things like traffic and road conditions. They provide kind of contextualized or enhanced data. So insurance companies or transportation departments, have better data to understand how to do things like road repairs or, make insurance quotes more efficient. Um, a lot of work in the US. So we did just sign start a project with the Dutch government. So we're doing something with the Netherlands as well. But on the technical side, that means running all things GCP and Google Cloud, from Kubernetes clusters to data pipelines using Bigtable or BigQuery, some of the other big tools there. Before this, I spent a lot of time kind of focusing on Kubernetes with a company called Fairwinds, building and managing Kubernetes-based infrastructures for different companies. And I was at Fairwinds twice, and in the middle, I did a project for the U.S. government for the National Flood Insurance Project. Again, mostly focused in Kubernetes and doing a lot of things around kind of monitoring and GitOps and such there too.
How does Kubernetes get involved with flooding? Does that have interest? Bit of a weird question.
That's a great question. So with them, it was a government project to take. So in the U.S., most insurance you buy is privatized, but through a strange situation, I think in the '60s, flood insurance is something actually managed through the government. You would buy it through a private company, but then it's still kind of managed and funded through the government. And that process had all been through an old mainframe.
Oh wow.
So if you had, and the big issue with that is that if a flood happened, in order to be able to get compensated and start rebuilding yourself, um, that could take months potentially. And so this was part of a larger project to modernize that system, bring it into modern applications, and then put that into Kubernetes, so that they would have a more kind of dynamic system and flexible system for their apps.
So obviously, with DR in mind, that's going to enable stuff to be moving in the cloud as opposed to being in a big data center. And if that floods as well, then you guys are pretty much done for.
There's that
So
too. Yeah,
I
yeah.
guess
So
from
it
an
wa-
insurance standpoint, Brian, doesn't that actually go against the insurance company because they won't get as many claims, they won't make as much money, or?
it's pretty funny. Yeah. Yeah, it's a strange situation, but I do know that it did make things move a lot faster. And it also allowed them to use some different technology to kind of make better predictions around kind of flood occurrences in different places and use that to change how they, quoted insurance, especially with the way things are changing around coastal areas.
Yeah,
That was kind of a big deal for them as well.
fair
So
enough.
yeah,
So I guess, Brian, where did it all begin for you? So where did you grow up? Where were you born, I guess, as well, and sort of,
sure.
that side of
Yeah.
things.
So my father's a retired diplomat, and so for the U.S. government, and so because of that, we spent a lot of time overseas. Most of my growing up years were in South and Southeast Asia. So went to high school in India and such, and then
Oh wow,
yeah, different.
nice.
And so that was an interesting way to grow up, and also a great way to kind of grow up with people from all over the world too. My best friends is English actually. So did that, came back to the US for university, worked in different things. I was a musician for a long time, playing and teaching music. And at a certain point, got too old to play shows that started at say 11 at night. Got into a sales thing and then moved into sales and tech, and landed eventually at the company that became Fairwinds. And after a number of years, actually transitioned into being a site reliability engineer there, which is where I started working, in the DevOps and SRE and cloud infrastructure landscape and focusing on Kubernetes. And so, yeah, worked there for a bit. Like I said, went to the government side for a little while through a government contractor, came back to Fairwinds, then came to this company Uh, I think about September of last year.
So it's still quite a new challenge for you then to get your teeth stuck into and that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Nice.
And being kind of the main person here to do this side of things, it's been a wonderful, very steep learning curve, but also full of very cool challenges. So
Fair
it's been
play.
a lot of fun.
How did this sort of transition from, because you've had a very unique journey, Brian. Obviously, first of all, wow on the sort of being born in the US. Your last name is it Polish, Brian? Am I correct in
It
saying
is.
that?
I have
Originating from?
ancestors from Eastern Europe. Yes.
Nice. Okay. So obviously, you then sort of grew up in India, went to school there. Do you speak any other languages aside from English, or
I like to tell people I speak some English, and that's most of it. But I learned French in school, but also picked up some Hindi when I was in India. It's been so long though that it would take me a little while to kind of get back
rusty,
into
right?
it. Yeah,
Probably quite
it
rusty
is.
by now. Fair enough. So obviously, music then into sales, into tech, so full on sort of DevOps engineering and
Yep,
SRE that side of things. So first of all, from music, were you full time as well as that doing
I
music? Were you
was.
getting paid for it? What sort of
Yep,
how did that all come about? I suppose.
sure, sure. So, um, I was in Seattle at the time, where I started really playing more seriously. Moved to New York, where I made that more serious, and eventually it became a full time job there. And then met my wife there, who was a history professor at the time. We moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and I
Wow,
played and taught music full time there. Taught meaning I played music all over the Southeast, but then, teach kids or adults music as well. I think for a lot of full-time professional musicians, especially sidemen type of folks like me, freelancers, kind of performing and teaching kind of go hand in hand. You kind of do both in order to kind of sustain yourself.
fair enough. I think I told you I was learning how to sort of make music on my own sort of like studio at the moment. So
Mhm.
I'm obviously not your level yet, Brian, but one day, you never know. I might get there. So,
It's oh, there's infinite levels. That's one of the how do I put it? One of the parallels between music and working in tech, I think.
yeah,
Is that, there's always endless things to learn and you're never gonna be satisfied.
I
And
think
if
as well.
you Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
Oh, yeah, and if you are satisfied, you're probably in the wrong industry. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think with music as well, it's so like opinion led, and everyone's got different tastes, and it's so what's really crappy music for you might be amazing for somebody else, and I think that's why it's so interesting for me because you can learn one genre, but then there's a whole another side of it, or 50 other sides of it where you don't not even sure about yet. So,
Absolutely, but
you
I
know,
think the more you get into it, you also learn kind of the shared vocabulary between them all. A lot of them have similar, especially yeah, rhythmic or harmonic undertones, you could say that,
yeah.
yeah, help those
Pe- pe-
transitions go a little easier.
People think that just like vocals and then instrumental, but so many things like leveling the dBs and so
Oh,
many
just
different
oh,
things,
that side of
EQing
things,
and
yeah. What you're
yeah, the
doing, what you're
mixing
talking
side.
about is a whole different world too,
Yeah,
and one that I don't even spend that much time in relatively. So, you're right. It's like I would much rather say, okay, you handle that part of it. I'm just going to play the notes.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Fair play. So music into sales, Brian. How did that work from your end?
uh, so it was more just kind of fell into it. Friend of my wife's was in a new company that was looking for somebody to help out with some things, and I said, sure, I'll help out. They were doing a trade show, I think, in Atlanta, and I helped out a bit there. And it went well. And they said, "Do you want to keep helping us out?" And we'd been looking to kind of leave the city, and they offered me a job working full time up in Chicago. So we moved there for a bit. Didn't totally work out that well. So after about a year, we moved to Colorado. We had a new child, and we're looking for a family, aka free babysitting. And so moved out to Colorado for that. And Colorado, had and has a pretty yeah, very dynamic and great tech scene, and so just kind of fell into things through that as well.
Nice.
Yeah.
In sales, what was the biggest thing you learned? Because I think sales is so dynamic and different to any other sort of line of work. Obviously, I work in sales to a
Yeah.
degree, as you know. So, what um, what was the hardest thing about sales, and what did you enjoy most?
So those are two great questions. Obviously, I'm not in sales anymore, and that was
Yeah,
very intentional. But I mean, I still enjoy talking to folks. I still enjoy talking to customers or prospective customers about what I'm working on. But I think as far as the hardest thing I think is the grind of it is tough. Um, the the grind of it and understanding, really working on a framework that allows you to kind of succeed over time with it and building that up. Um, I mean, it's really hard to really, you have to have that drive to be able to follow up with people over and over again and over and over again and try and get them to actually, you know,
Work with you and be told
exactly,
no and
exactly.
be okay with being told no, which is I think one of the key things as well. Don't
That's
take
a
it to
big
heart.
part. It's
Yeah.
hard. Yeah. I mean, and you've got to be ready. You've got to have that mentality. The things I've learned though, I think are, how to talk and listen to people, how to try and it's things I continue to work on, but, try and understand when you're trying to understand what people want or trying to get them to potentially adopt a different way of doing something, which I think in the way of, in the DevOps or platform engineering world or whatnot, you do that all the time because you're working with different teams and such. Um, yeah, trying to have a better way to approach that and you know understand kind of what's behind someone's concerns, understand why they may be reluctant to make some changes, understand how a solution might fit for them, that doesn't necessarily work on the surface, or how to get them to buy into something that again they're potentially not interested in right away. I think there's some engineers are very smart and know that, but they'll also go into a situation saying, "Hey, I know what's best. What you're doing is wrong. You should do it this way." I think that's not necessarily the easiest way to go to
Yeah.
get something going, and so I've had a lot more success with a couple ways. One is to just go in and say, "Okay, how are you doing things now? What's going on with that?" Or another one is just start doing it and build the thing, build a new tool or incorporate it and let people come to it, let other people hear about it. And, if it's working well, they'll come to it and people will seek you out to want to use that. And so I had a lot of success with that as well.
I think being curious in sales is really important. I think you said there, you actually made me smile because you sort of, when you start a call with your prospective client, shall we say, I think asking questions is the most important thing because if you're just telling them about you the whole time, look at
Hmm.
me, I've done this, I've done that, I've built this, I've built that, I'm the guy you should use. It's not this in this day and age, it's not the way to go about it, in my opinion, for anyone. So I think asking questions, being curious, and actually understanding them and being thoughtful around why they're looking to speak to you is number one
For
in my
sure.
eyes, anyway. So
Yeah, and I think one of the best frameworks I remember is I think it's called spin selling. And I think a British person came up with it a number of years ago, which is really kind of a consultative approach to, asking questions in a way that, you understand what a situation is and really dig in to see what the real pain behind it is. Like, why do you really need this? If you don't fix your problem, what is the implication of that? You know, what's going to go wrong if you do or don't fix it. And I think, in technology, when we're constantly being approached by new topics, new ways of doing things, or new tools or trends or whatnot, it's very easy to say, "Oh, I want to try the shiny new thing," or "I want to move things around," or "Oh, I did this in my last place. Let's make this the thing we do now." Whether then, aside from really and I've had this issue before, I think that I had to learn from, where it's much better to sit in and see what's actually happening and why before making that judgment of, "Oh, this isn't how I did it before. So,
it
we
doesn't
should
work.
just change it." Yeah.
Yeah. No, fair enough. So then you went from sales into tech, right? So
Mhm.
when I say tech, I mean engineering. So you've been,
Engineering. Yeah.
instead of talking to people and trying to sell them a solution, you're now building tools for companies to go and sell to other people. If that's fair to say. So
Yeah.
in most cases, anyway. So I guess for you, Brian, how was that step into being a full-on engineer?
That's a great question. So one thing that made it work where I was and why they were fair winds was, interest in having me move over was that it was effectively like a managed service company. Um, that had a lot of direct client interaction. I mean, we had
Okay.
shared Slack channels. We were, working with them, especially in like a build out phase, every day, connecting over video calls or through Slack, trying to be an extension of their team. And so having people who are comfortable talking to clients was important for them. So being able to and to be able to speak about technology to them as well, and to, I think with sales, once I started leading conversations, I had to get very comfortable with saying what I don't know, or effectively saying like, "Hey, I don't know what this is. Let me get back to you." Being okay with that. That's a big part of it. I think a lot of people kind of shoot themselves in the foot by saying, by kind of pretending they might know something. But I think in general, just having that ability to talk to clients and work with them and then kind of plan things out from that standpoint kind of lent itself over to the engineering side. And so, you know, there was definitely a learning curve there, but I think they, at that point, were happy with someone who could already talk to folks and be comfortable with that.
Okay. And were you already technical, Brian, before you went into that company, or?
I'd had some experience with tech years before that in different jobs, nothing to that degree. I'd spent some time on the side kind of considering moving into more technical roles. So I'd spent a while working through a cool online program, not really a boot camp, more of like something that was designed to kind of really generate an understanding of foundations and fundamentals in tech at a very strong level so that you'd be very flexible with what you did with it. I'd been doing that for a while and had gotten to a point where I started to feel more and more confident about being able to do this in a working sense. And so that lined up when they were kind of interested in bringing me over.
Nice. So obviously on that topic, Brian, when you said about learning the fundamentals and the foundations of your skill set in
Mhm,
DevOps or in tech, shall we say, a lot of people will start with Linux, for example. What
mhm.
was your first tool you ever used? What was the first thing you learned in terms of the foundations of tech?
Okay, so I mean, I'm dating myself by going back to like, I mean, those were the days of Dreamweaver or Fireworks or whatnot, where I wasn't, or basic HTML. I mean, there were some things back then. The program I was on wasn't necessarily focused on kind of a Linux or sysadmin or DevOps side. It was more on a web development side. So you did learn a lot of Linux as part of that. And actually through the program, someone had like a side thing open where people were, learning about Linux as well, which was super helpful. It was more using, I think, Ruby and JavaScript to teach some of the basic fundamentals of programming in general, and software development, understanding, conditional statements or scope and things like passing, what are you passing into functions to a point where you could conceivably, go into different programming languages and be able to be comfortable with, how to figure things out.
So you're now more of like a polyglot programmer, would you say? Can you sort of pick up new languages as and when, or is it a struggle when you
Honestly,
go to like Python and then over to Bash and then over to C++?
that's a great question. I mean, I do some of that stuff, but once I got into the SRE world, um, a lot of us will just say we just become like YAML engineers. We're doing a lot of configuration, um, for things using tools like Terraform or Ansible or or YAML for Kubernetes in particular. And so while there is, bash scripting involved with that or working with, say Python or Go occasionally, that's definitely not the the m like, the core part of what I've done as an SRE. And
Okay.
granted, a lot of SRE work does involve building tools, and at Fairwinds, I did help with that somewhat. We did have tools that we used, and also offered to the open source community. Um, but by and large, you're more of a consumer of a lot of those tools at times.
Yeah. Okay. I guess from like tools you use now then, so you've now gone to a level where you're, I would say, pretty strong on the technical side of things. Obviously, you wouldn't
Mhm.
get to a head of DevOps if you weren't good at tech. I'd like to think anyway. So what tools do you rely on, I guess? Rely on's a big word, but
Oh, no,
what do
you could
what do
say
you
that,
actually,
that's
yeah,
fine.
so
I
what do you
mean,
rely on every day?
yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I think a lot of people will say it is these days, your AI tools have become a huge part of a core part of what you do. So using ChatGPT through a tool like Cursor, which kind of mimics a development environment. Um, Especially where I am, there's just a lot of different things that need to be touched at different times. And so, you know, I may not necessarily know the code base that well, but I can use tools like that to help me navigate that and make changes as need be. Using different tools like, again, Google's Big Table and moving data around in different ways, may use pipelining tools like data flow and whatnot. And having those AI tools there to help me configure them is invaluable. Again, I don't think you can't just give an AI tool to anybody who doesn't know anything about tech and expect it to work. But if you know what you're looking for, if you know what the outcome you should be, and if you know some guardrails, it's an incredibly helpful tool. I mean, to that point, I still use Terraform all the time. I'm using the G Cloud tool a lot, um, to help create these different resources there. But yeah, right now it's moving data around in different ways, using different yeah tools to help, again, manipulate that data, so it becomes valuable for folks.
Okay. And with the AI side of it, I don't want to go over too much AI stuff. We
Mhm.
do it every episode, I think,
I'm
at the
sure.
moment. It's a big talking point, right? But with the, how gradual was the implementation of using AI? Because obviously, I think was it 2022 or 2023, it started to really come to play fruition. I think chat came out 2023,
Mhm.
March or April, from memory. It's been obviously been a while. Um, but how sort of like immediate was that usage of that when you start to trust AI in
That's
your
a
sort
great
of production
question.
environment?
Great question. So in Fairwinds, it was much more gradual for me. I really wasn't using it a whole lot. When I first started using it, it was specifically to make some things that I knew how to do go much faster. Um, Specifically, or kind of more toil type tasks. Like, I need to convert a bunch of files in one format into another format, for something like something in YAML to Terraform or whatnot, or JSON, whatever. And I could spend a while figuring out the right pattern to make that work within a bash script or whatnot. Or I could work with ChatGPT to make that go much faster, or Claude or whatnot. That's where I initially started to use that. I would say it was over the past year that I began to do that, year and a half.
Okay.
And it was pretty slow and really just kind of focused on that. Um, Started to use it more at Fairwinds, working some of the open source tools to do things like generate tests or whatnot, to say, all right, here's some code base that could use some tests because we didn't have those. Let's use this to start building like a base of tests for that we can look through and say, okay, what do you need? What do you not need? Um, and then moving here to Move, it's been invaluable to ramp up and be able to be productive much faster. You can use it to say, hey, let's look through the code base and see where things are. Let's make some configurations here. Hey, I don't quite understand how this interaction with the database works, but I need to make some changes to it. Help me work through some different POCs, with different tools to see how we can, iterate faster. So yeah, it's become very quickly a very core part of what I'm doing.
Okay. And are you sort of dependent on AI? Is that ever going to happen, do you think,
Oh,
with
I absolutely. Yeah, I think, yeah,
really?
it makes everything go much faster. Yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't have nearly the velocity that I think I do without it.
Fair play. Okay.
Yeah.
One thing, Brian, I think I sort of mentioned last month when we spoke was shift left mentality, because I hear it every day when I speak to engineers. Like, I shift left, I shift left. But what are your thoughts on shifting left, and what does it actually mean for people that don't know what it is?
That's a great question. So in Fairwinds, that was a big part of kind of the tooling that we developed and some of the things that we were doing to help enable our clients with Kubernetes. And this was, again, specifically within a Kubernetes context. We would be managing clusters for clients. They would be responsible for putting applications in that infrastructure, in those systems. But you don't always get to, there were certain things around. eh, Let's put it this way: you can put a lot into a Kubernetes cluster, but it may not work right unless it's configured correctly, and you may not know it's not configured correctly until you put it in there. And You may end up having issues with sizing workloads. They may use way more resources or too few resources. They may have certain security issues that you don't actually identify until they're actually running in the environment. And so a lot of the shift left mentality there was about putting kind of guardrails in place and checks in place and recommendations in place much earlier in the process. So things that would, run in CI/CD pipelines, things that would run, scan image repos or scan code repos as part of that as well. So that as people were developing and getting things ready to deploy, a lot of these checks and safeguards and things would be there so that by the time it got to the cluster, it was already, optimized and secure and ready to go.
And if any of those guardrails fail, or if anything, whose fault is that? Who's that? Sorry, not whose fault. That's blame game.
Oh, sure.
Who's
Yeah.
responsible for the failure of the guardrails or security breaking down because shift left hasn't worked effectively?
That's a good question. I mean, at that time we were we had I think we still do at Fairwinds had a number of open source tools around that, but also a product called Insights that kind of collated those tools together into like a single, viewpoint. Um at a certain point, obviously, you're kind of dealing if you're dealing with software, that's part of it. It's also the implementation of it, it's the consistency of it. It's whether or not the people who are deploying are actually using that. And that gets into like a almost like a platform engineering kind of topic in terms of here's the golden path or here's what you have to do, but I don't want to do that. That's not going to be fast enough. I'm going to go around that. Are you going to kind of sidestep those things or not? I think it just depends on the organization, how it's structured. You might have things that are like a general tool set that gets implemented by specific teams, or it might be something that a platform team is responsible for and or a DevOps team is responsible for, in that process as well. So um as far as if something doesn't work and gets sidestepped or whatnot, I think it depends on the organization, it depends on what tool you're using.
Nice. How does it feel being the solo DevOps person in a business? Because, I think DevOps is a lot about collaboration and communication and actually enabling developers a lot of the
Mhm.
time. So
Yeah.
how does it feel being, is it quite lonely being the only guy in DevOps? How does it
Great
feel?
question. I right now it's small, and while it would be nice to have more company, and we'll have that soon, um, it's been fun to be able to touch all sorts of different things and make impacts that way. Maybe so it's kind of the one thing I would say actually is that having more people forces you to have more standards and have more processes in place.
Yeah.
When there's few or less people, it becomes a lot easier to not do that, which leaves tech debt, which can create issues that you have to figure out or go back to later on. So, having more people, I think, is much better at holding yourselves accountable. And so that's something I can say that, would be much nicer to have right now. When you're moving so fast in a startup, it's very,
Tough.
it's easy
It's
to like
tough,
go,
isn't it?
oh, I just got to do this. What's the fastest way to do this? As opposed to think, okay, what's the better way to do this? How should I have? And, in fact, I think a couple months ago, I adjusted our pipeline to put more guardrails in place there as well, just because of that. It's like, okay, I have to start doing this because, yeah, because we have to. And it's something that would probably been much sooner, more automatically kind of created had there been more people around.
Which CI/CD platform do you typically like to use? And I know that sometimes people use multiple ones at once, but was your preferred tool, and what do you think is cheapest and best for the price?
Ooh, that's a
Tough
good
question.
question too. I mean, it's honestly just been wherever I've been has been kind of what I've used. So, well, I will say that I would put Jenkins at the bottom of that list, and you can keep that in here.
I hear
That's
that a lot.
yeah,
Brian, I hear that a lot. Very
yeah.
clunky, very old school. The
It's
UI apparently is
complicated.
horrible and complicated. Yeah, yeah.
It's also very easy to make very complicated. I notice as well. Like, and so it can become a very tangled web. Right now, just use Google's cloud build and deploy setup, which is fine. We don't have a lot of, yeah. complexity with what we're doing on the Kubernetes side as far as applications being as far as what we're doing on the, with these data pipeline based applications. And so it's been effective. I think the main thing I did was some adjustments to make the build steps go faster. So I didn't have to wait as long for testing things out. I've used Circle CI a lot. I've used GitLab a lot. Um, I enjoyed using GitLab with Google. Um, I think because GitLab was integrated with the code base as like a single thing, that made it and it had some integration with Terraform as well. At one position I had that made it I really enjoyed that. It allowed me to kind of combine a lot of things together in a way that wasn't typically able to do with other tools.
I think GitLab and GCP is quite a familiar sort of duo. They go together quite well
It
from what
is.
I've
It
been
is.
seeing last sort of 4 or 5 years. You don't
Yeah.
see many. I'm not even sure if Jenkins can even go with. Can it go with GCP? I'm not sure. I'm not an
You can
engineer,
run
but
it in there. Yeah, and I think there's ways to integrate it in different ways. I mean, GitLab has a decent integration with it, and I think it's more because, yeah, GitLab, I think in Microsoft kind of does this now with its GitHub Actions and such. Um, having a lot of stuff kind of integrated together and in the same place made it, easy to build things out. You didn't have to really try it wasn't as much wiring things together in the same way.
nice. I guess as well as we obviously everyone knows now that you use GCP at the moment. That's your preferred cloud provider for your current setup, I guess. Or
It's currently where everything is with this company, but I've worked in the main 3 cloud providers.
okay. In that case, then what's your preference? Taking out the recent, recency bias, what do you think's the thing is, Brian, that obviously, as you know, the AWS and Azure have so many more sort of services available, I guess, in terms of number. But I think, from what I've been told before anyway, does GCP lack in that regard in terms of the amount or the spread of stuff they have to offer? Or
I think for what we're using here on the data pipelining side and data analytics, Google's always had, I mean, a really good kind of group of products. Um, and I think that's the reason the company's here and it takes advantage of that. And so it's really for what we're doing here, it's a great tool for sure. Um, Microsoft, I probably have the least amount of work in, but and most of it has been strictly Kubernetes. I felt that in general on the Kubernetes side, they've kind of been more of a follower than Amazon and Google have, and so in that sense, and it's just been a little clunkier to get things going and less flexible. Um, Amazon obviously has like umpteen services available. Um, I will say, like on the I feel like EKS, their managed Kubernetes service has come an incredibly long way, and I think provides the most flexibility out of the 3, for certain use cases that I have that that makes it easier for certain things. Um, and I think they also have a lot more flexible tooling in general that kind of makes it I feel it makes it easier to be able to kind of customize things to how you want them to go. They're less yeah, less opinionated about what you should be doing. Um, and I think that's kind of how Amazon's tended to work in general in a lot of ways. Uh, and so in that case, I think from a Kubernetes side, I've really enjoyed working in Amazon, but obviously Kubernetes came from Google. And so their solution's always going to be rock solid.
yeah.
And for what I'm doing, it's tended to be, even here, I haven't really had many complaints about it.
Fair enough. I guess in terms of like, obviously you have Kubernetes, but everything else in terms of the other services and stuff, we see a lot of companies that are the more enterprise companies, big insurance firms, for example, they tend to use Azure typically. A lot of the smaller startups do go with GCP. That's what we're seeing last 4 or 5 years anyway. And then AWS is common in both. So it's weird to see sort of, Microsoft be in more enterprise level environments and then having Google in more small startups that are growing quick environments. Why do you think that is?
Sure. No, I think it's a pretty yeah. My understanding of that is that on the Microsoft side, most of those enterprises have been, part of the Microsoft ecosystem for longer than Azure's been around. And so for them getting into the cloud was very much thinking, well, we're already here with these folks, let's use them. I have a feeling that's probably why, and they, Azure was going to integrate with a lot of those other kind of Microsoft services, especially on things like identity management and such. Um, so that's my sense of why most of the kind of enterprise companies that have probably been around for a long
That
time
makes
are
sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
On the other side of things, Amazon, I think for companies that haven't been as embedded with Microsoft or kind of came around as cloud became, started to become established as cloud became more of the norm. Amazon has been the default because Amazon Web Services, I think, what was it, 2006 it started, sometime around, I forget what it was, but it's become like, as far as cloud goes, essentially the main leader, I think, of the driver. And so it's kind of like people used to say years ago about IBM, like you're not going to get fired for choosing IBM. Amazon's probably the same thing in this world, in this day and age. Like it's established, it's a known thing, everyone knows about it. Um, and it gobbled up market share, I think, because of that. Uh, Google took a little longer to get going on some with its cloud offering. And I think but that said, they provide a lot of incentives, not just incentives, I think, to smaller companies and startups. They have a lot of great the programs and tools to let you start building and iterating quite quickly. There's Kubernetes, which is great if you need it. But if you're not used to Kubernetes, if you haven't run things in containers before, or if you're just even starting out on the cloud, Google has tools like App Engine or Cloud Run or whatnot that make it relatively easy to get started without having a huge amount of kind of knowledge about the underlying infrastructure. And with Kubernetes, you really have to start going deeper to make it work for you.
It's
And
funny
I
how
think that,
everyone oh, sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
Amazon's starting to do that with some different services, but I think Google's had some. They've had some other ones for a while. I think though, I feel Google's have been easier to work with, and I think they've definitely been more startup friendly in some different ways.
It's funny how, like, everyone speaks about the 3 major cloud providers, the 3 big boys in the market now, but IBM, Alibaba Cloud, which no one really uses, to be fair, but they're still there. So do you think that, like, an AI cloud provider could be a thing? Like, could ChatGPT make their own cloud at some point? Is that possible, or
I think having AI run a cloud is probably well, a cloud essentially means you have a lot of hardware somewhere. You still need to build data centers. You still need all of this running somewhere. Um, that still takes people, I think, until
robots, right?
we have our robot overlords doing that. That's yeah. That said, I mean, AI is behind a lot of things that I think the big cloud providers are using to build their clouds out right now, probably, and they're certainly part of those offerings. I'm going to I've got to renew my Google Cloud Architect certificate, and my understanding is the renewal exam is much shorter than kind of the initial one you have to take, but it's also very AI focused. And so they have new case studies that they provide for you that are specifically about AI and Google's AI solutions. I think if you went to a cloud conference for either AWS reInvent or Google Next, you know, the vast majority of the talks they have are going to be AI.
Everywhere. Yeah.
It's just what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to happen for the fad's going to be a thing for a while. I think as Kubernetes was the main thing for like 4, 5, 6, 7 years. I think now that the new buzzword is AI, and we have to accept it, right? There's no getting away from it. So, um,
Even at the
so I do,
Kubernetes conference, the talks are about AI and how Kubernetes can enable AI and
yeah,
machine learning and how different hardware tooling can allow you to run AI through Kubernetes or use AI to run Kubernetes better. I mean, those are all just part of the world now. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Are you going to KubeCon this year?
I don't know. I did not go this year. It was in Atlanta and I had just moved over to move uh before then. So I didn't go then. I went I think the previous couple years with Fairwinds. I'd like to go. It's a fantastic conference. I haven't been to the one in Europe. I've heard it's fantastic as well. It's because it's a, there are corporate sponsors, there are corporate events, there are corporate parts of it, but it is, a massive open source ecosystem.
Yeah.
And so there is still a very large kind of community element to it, making it, it's a great way to go and meet other folks doing what you're doing and see how they do it differently than you.
I think my plan is, I'm not sure if I told you, but obviously the WeChat Tech podcast is part of the DevOps Society
Mhm.
community that we do. So my plan at some point in the next couple of years is to actually have a stand at KubeCon or have something that shows us as a community. So I think it can be quite powerful thing to have in these sort of big arenas that people see what we're doing in a more grander stage, shall we say, or
Abs-
larger stage. So a lot of exciting meetups and conferences happening, I think. There's lots of DevOps Live as well in Europe. I'm not sure if you know that one, but
Oh, the one that
those
they have it in Colorado as well, it's called DevOps Days. I've been to
yes.
that. I know some of
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
folks finish that. That's always
It's
been fun to go
everywhere.
to. Yeah, they have that all over. And I think they're starting in the Kubernetes side and kind of the Cloud Native Community Foundation as well, starting to have more local or regional versions of what th're doing. Like I think it's called Kube Days or something like that, where
Oh, right.
yeah, again, they're starting to kind of break things down from just kind of the massive regional conferences to also have more localized events, which I think is great.
I think the only thing about the sort of the larger conferences is that the cost of going, unless the company's paying for you to go, I think I've heard a lot of people complain to me saying, "Ben, this conference is £1,000 to go here and, be part of it, or it's £500. It's quite a lot of money to expect from engineers, I think, unless they're sponsored by the company that are paying for them.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I've seen.
Right. Most of those companies will, or the conferences will often give discounts either for students or for folks who don't have a job. But if you have a job, but your company won't pay for it,
The problem.
that's
Yeah.
going to cost you. And I can understand that. A company wants to understand the value they're going to get out of it. When I was working at a managed service Kubernetes company, going to KubeCon, there's a lot of value I can get from that. I can see what people are working on. I can look and see how, see presentations of case studies, go to vendor booths, see what, new products that are out there. Um, one of the great things about KubeCon is that all of the different open source projects in Kubernetes that are, within the mantle of the CNCF are, they have their own booths there where you'll have maintainers, the people who like run these things are going to
Yeah.
be there. You can go straight and talk to these folks about how to do things or why they're doing things, what they have on the roadmap. It's invaluable. Um, but where I am now, I'm trying to think, well, what would I get out of KubeCon based on what my company currently does and needs with Kubernetes? Um, would a Google conference make more sense? I'm not sure.
Mm.
You know, where do I need to go to get the answers I need to both make what we're doing better, make it more efficient, make it more powerful, and understand what to prepare for on the horizon?
I think as well, there's a lot of online conferences that people do for this sort of stuff. I don't think it's as solid as going in person to meet people and actually having that interaction with them face to face. You can't beat that for me. Solo
Absolutely.
meets up so much.
Yeah, no, I think they're great, and I think what you and I talked about previously about having kind of running these local events around the
Yeah.
UK, like that sounds fantastic. I live an hour north of Denver, about just under an hour, probably about an hour from Boulder as well, which are kind of the two main tech hubs in Colorado. And it's just far enough that it's hard for me to get down there for like an evening event or something, and we don't have where I live in Fort Collins, there's a decent tech community, but not that same sort of, density as you, if you will. But I know folks who, yeah, there's certainly a lot of different events that happen in those two cities. And if I were nearby, I'm sure I would take more advantage of that. I think having that localized experience where folks who just speak the same weird language
Same
as you do
language.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that my wife is, you ask my wife what I do for work, and it's, oh, he works in computers and tech,
yeah.
and I don't want her to have to know what I do.
No one knows what DevOps really is, do they? Outside of
No,
it, it's
yeah,
weird how no one knows about it. I just say like I do recruitment, and even that they're like, "What's recruitment?" I'm like, "How do you get a job? How did you get a job?"
that's
that's
right. Exactly,
that's
exactly.
what I
So,
work in, and I think
yeah,
the same for
so
you guys too.
Yeah, it's nice to be around your people in that
Yeah.
way. Yeah,
No, I agree. They can relate to you and like yeah, as you said, they speak the same language and compare toolings and what you like and what's not good and that sort
exactly.
of stuff.
It can be very stimulating and very energizing. Like I always come back from KubeCon very excited.
No, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Butterflies. Um, so I guess sort of closing reflection has been a good chat, Brian, by the way. Thanks for your time.
Likewise, Brian.
Um, sort of a quick fire round, I guess,
Mhm.
from me. So what's one DevOps principle that you rely on most?
Ooh, good question. I mean, I don't know if principle is a good word, but kind of practices, I guess, that I try and focus on. Um, I think infrastructure as code is massive because if you don't do it, as I've said earlier, bad things can happen. I think GitOps has come around in a few years and is a another fantastic type of practice that I think more and more people are doing. And I think it, when done correctly, um, is incredibly powerful. I think you should be able to see have what's running in your system be presented in code elsewhere and have kind of automated systems be able to take that code and make it a reality in the cluster in your infrastructure. I think both of those practices are great and I always kind of move towards those whenever I can.
What's the most misunderstood DevOps concept?
Oh God.
There's many, right?
I think it's what DevOps means
Yeah.
because I think there's two sides to that. This is a bigger question, or like, hopefully, I'm not going to get too far in the weeds with this, but I think DevOps started as a practice, a philosophy of being able to kind of break down these silos in positive ways, so that you could move faster and move more cleanly, and have people have responsibility and understanding for you know things beyond their own little area where they're working. Um, that became tooling, that became engineers. A lot of people think the idea of a DevOps engineer is shouldn't exist because it's a practice, not a job. But I think these days the terms DevOps, platform engineer, infrastructure engineer, site reliability engineer. I mean, I think DevOps engineer and site reliability engineer both have more like there are very formal ways to use those terms, but I think just in the way the industry is,
They merge, don't they? Yeah.
they become flexible in terms of what you do. And so I think like never if you go into a job with one of those terms, it's very rarely that you should ever expect it to be that specific to what you think you're going to be. You should always be kind of up for whatever most of the time, because especially in a smaller company, that's probably going to happen.
What's a three-word power phrase that you'd use for a junior that's looking to get into DevOps?
Oh God, 3 words? Um, uh, confidently ask questions.
Ooh, okay. Okay. I like it. I like it. Why those three words and why that answer?
Um, I think it goes back to the thing of um, f not being uncomfortable asking a question, thinking that the person you're asking it to might wonder why you're asking that question and don't know the answer to it. It's either
Okay.
imposter syndrome or not wanting to look ridiculous or stupid, and I can totally understand that. I think getting past that now granted, like, you should always try and do some research beforehand, like, most of us spend a lot of time Googling answers anyway, but we live we work at most of us are in a world where, like, I kinda compare it to being surrounded by 3 feet of snow, and wherever you put your foot, it's gonna drop down 3 feet into something else. Like, nobody knows that very few people know everything, and those that do are working at, like, Netflix or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, almost everybody knows some things about some things. Um, and the best skills you learn are how to find the answers faster than you did before, or have a better mental model of how things work to be able to find those answers faster. So I think like a junior person should be able to get comfortable asking questions. And actually, when I was a senior engineer at Fairwinds, one of the things I specifically did was ask questions in the open in Slack to people, to other folks, to kind of model that behavior. So either if we were in a Zoom call or on Slack, let other people know that yes, I'm asking questions too, and you should as well.
I think, Brian, that's a real inspiration for people looking to get into it. That you don't have to know everything, even at your level now. You're never going to know everything, are you? So, always things you're going to learn. If you knew everything in the first 10 years of your career, what are you going to do for the next 30 years? You want to keep learning and challenging your brain and
Yeah. That's why people
evolving.
leave. They get bored,
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah,
that's why
100%.
yeah, I mean, you're a recruiter, people job hop a lot in tech, and a lot of
Yeah, yeah.
that's part of that's obviously salary motivated, but a lot of people do it
Boredom.
because boredom.
Yeah,
This is not a job for people who you don't want to have to continue learning things.
I agree. What's one piece of advice you'd give for somebody going into their first solo DevOps engineer role, as you have
Um,
just done?
well, I hope you've done something of this before. Um, Again, if you're going, like I said before, if you're going into a system that's kind of been built already, and uh, you're just getting into it, don't try and reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
Just get in, spend a lot of time understanding not just the system, but why it was done that way. And a lot of times that takes kind of building and maintaining things and working through the existing system to understand why it was done that way. And then you eventually, some things that you thought shouldn't be done a certain way, you might realize, oh no, that does make sense. You know. Um, and then don't bite off more than you could chew at one time. You might have an expectation that I'm going to do all these great things in like 6 months. You're not, because a lot of the time, if you're the only person, you're going to be fighting fires too. Um, Figure out, and then, and I think this goes for whether you're the only person or not, understand the business side of things in order to find priorities to focus on. Especially at a small startup, I think, folks here have said, like, there's going to be all sorts of things happening. You're not going to get to them all. They all might be important. You're going to have to figure out what's the most important thing right now to do. And if you're one person, you know, you're going to eventually have more people, but until you have those people, you're going to have to figure those things out and be very intentional about that.
I think you have to prioritize what's most important and really be organized in your brain, but also on paper in terms of
Yes.
what's the most important thing to do right now and what can wait till next week. You know,
Exactly. And make sure you have those conversations with the other stakeholders, the people you work with, you know, not just to get alignment on it, but so they know what you're working on. Because they might out of the blue come to you and say, oh, I've got to do this thing. And, you know, some people are going to be the type of people who just say, okay, fine, I'm going to drop whatever I do because you
yeah,
need this thing now.
that's me.
Um,
That's what I do. It's not good.
No, and I certainly do that a lot myself, and it's, yeah, I mean, if you have it down, like, what you're working on and the impact of it, you can gauge that versus what this person's asking for, and say, like, "Okay, is this really a very quick thing that I can do for them, and I can get back to what I'm doing, or is this gonna open a can of worms where I'm gonna spend the next week trying to fix this thing,
And
and
then
I'm
you
not gonna be
forget
able to
the
do
other
it?"
thing you were doing. You forget where you were at with it and what you've done and what you've achieved and
Right,
what's
right.
next. So
It's like, what's happening with the company right now? Are there customers that need tools working in a certain way for us to be able to satisfy their needs? Are we looking to save costs in certain ways? Like, what are the overarching kind of themes that I need to focus on? Um, that I think is the what you should be starting out with.
nice. Uh, Question for the next guest, Brian. It could be anything for the next person on here.
Um, what keeps you interested in what you're doing? let me rephrase that. Because I was speaking to somebody about this who's, I think, he's a coach for different types of software folks. And um, what part of your work gives you the fastest sense of gratification, that endorphin rush or whatnot? What's the thing that you like to do that keeps you going? And is it something that takes like, I guess a follow up would be, or, if you don't get that answer from it, is it stuff that happens quickly in quick succession, or is it like a longer term type of project? Like, are you happier when you've got like a bunch of smaller tasks to do, each one done, and I can move on to something? Or do you like having the big thing that you need to work on and get that done and go to another big thing?
Nice. Okay. Last thing, Brian, where can people find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. Um, Come say hi to me there if you'd like. I'm on the RANS leadership Slack, the tech leadership Slack there. So if you're part of that, feel free to say hi. And if you come to sunny Colorado, I'd love to say hi as well.
When you say sunny, is that sarcasm or
No, actually, it's
no?
not sarcasm. When I lived in Seattle, that would have been sarcasm.
Right, yeah, I've been
Um,
told it's pretty
yeah, but
dark
it's
there, isn't it?
I don't know if you can see it, but yeah, we get a lot of sun here. So it's
Is
quite
there any
nice.
mountains outside or not? Any mountains you've got out there right now, or can
Oh,
you
can we
from your
see
house?
them today? Unfortunately, they're all hidden.
Ah,
And I
okay.
live near some mountains. If you were closer to Denver, you'd see we're all along kind of the the
Periphery.
front range, they call it, right next to
Ah, got you.
the mountains. Yeah, no, unfortunately, you'd see a somewhat tattered Tottenham Hotspur flag, which kind of,
Oh, really?
sadly to say, kind of captures the team at the moment. But
Yeah. It's not going well, is it?
one of the happiest moments of my life was last May when they won the Europa League title.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
funny how fast things can change, but I have
I
hope.
re I really thought Thomas Frank would be a good addition, but it's so boring to watch. It's just so,
I
like,
think
what's the word for
he's
it?
Yeah. I think he's pragmatic and trying to
Yeah,
form a
that's the one.
foundation before doing
Pragmatic,
it.
that's the one. Yeah.
I say that as far as developing the team. Like, if I was gonna look at this as glass half full as opposed to, like, nearly empty, which might be where it is at the moment, I think he's, I think he's trying to work on some kinda core transformations that don't allow them to necessarily play how they want. That said, it's like always, we're hit with injuries, but we're also not, I don't know.
But you sell, like
It's boring.
you sold
Yeah.
Johnson, and he was actually one of your best players last season. I just don't understand why he didn't maybe didn't fit his system, I don't know, but
Johnson is great at he's great at scoring those goals when
yeah,
he gets them in the right position and gets them, and he was doing that a lot before.
he was.
Um, he's not that dynamic a player otherwise. He's like, if you're just gonna have these counterattacks, with blistering speed, and he's gonna be on the end of that, that's fantastic because he's super fast and do that. But I think, he's not the kind of person who's gonna play on the wing and, like, take on somebody,
No, no,
take on a
no.
player. He's gonna pass them back. He's gonna pass that back, and, I think that's why we got Kudus, who, of course, got
One-on-one,
injured.
very good. Yeah.
He is, but now he's out for about a month and a half or so.
Oh, is he?
Right.
No.
Yeah, right after we sold Johnson, he got injured, so
Oh, dear me, Brian. Oh, dear me. If you don't finish
yeah, I don't
top
know
10, that's
who
terrible. Top
who do you
10,
support,
I'm a
or
Birmingham City fan.
Oh,
Championship.
okay. Cool.
Yeah,
Not Villa then.
unfortunately.
Alright. Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. I'm not a glory hunter, Brian. Or neither are you. So,
Yeah.
you know, we're true fans. Why do you support Tottenham again? You did tell me this before, but I've forgotten.
My uncle went to in London in the late '60s for school, and he became a fan then. And then when I started in the '90s, starting to follow the game, like, it just gravitated towards me. And my friend from England's a Hull City fan,
You
and
told
while
me
I do
this.
have yeah, I have a soft spot for them, but uh, they were in the Premier League for a season or two.
Yeah, yeah. They were in
That
the
was a big deal.
playoffs. They're in the playoffs now, I think. They were a few weeks ago.
Oh, that's
Um,
right. Yeah. No,
yeah, they're
they're
doing quite well.
yeah, I think, and they used to get a bunch of Spurs players. There were like 3 or 4 at one point, like Michael Dawson and Livermore and Tom Huddlestone, and there were like a bunch there at one time. And actually, the last time I was in London was the year that White Hart Lane was taken down, and I was visiting my friend because he was moving to Singapore, and we went to see Hull City at Spurs. and he was
Oh wow.
surprised because we were cheering all of the former Spurs players who were there. And I was like, well, none of them are Sol Campbell. So, like, of course we're going to cheer for that, you know. Uh, but he was like mildly touched by that. And so, yeah.
They had Fraser Campbell, who was at Hull, I think, but he was ex-Tottenham, but he wasn't that
He was
great,
on
was he?
loan
Injury
at,
prone.
I think he was on, this was years ago. I mean, you're
Yeah,
dating. Yeah, this is going
a long
back a
time
long
back.
ways.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was on loan with Manchester from Manchester United when Hull City got promoted
He
to the
was,
Premiership.
yeah.
And
Yeah, you're right.
then I think he got bought by Tottenham
Yeah, I think
that
you're
next
right.
season, but he didn't last. Like he didn't really do much.
No,
I don't know. He may have ended up back at Hull at some point. I don't remember,
been a long
but
time. I think he's retired now. He must be close to retirement or has
he
retired.
must be. I mean, it's been a long time. I don't remember the last person. Who was it? He just got fired from West Brom as their coach. Actually, he was one of the last ones we sold there. I love that guy. He was great. I mean, unfortunately he was injured a lot, but he was such a great player. He ended up managing for us like after both Mourinho got sacked and Conte. Um, Let me see if I can just pull that up super
I
quick.
should know this. Well, that's terrible for me.
No, it's absolutely atrocious for me.
So sorry, you managed Tottenham or managed Cole?
Let me pull his name up. I feel so bad for not knowing this. He just got fired. Uh, let's see. Where is it? Come on, come on. Ryan Mason.
Ah, yes, yes, it was.
So he was our assistant coach. He was like youth coach with us, and then he was an assistant coach for multiple
He had a
years.
brain injury, right? So he had that brain injury or something, didn't he?
Right. He ended up so we sold him to Hull City, and I think that's when he got the brain injury. And then that's when he had to retire.
Yeah.
Um it was after we'd sold him. Because I think at the time we had to make room for Harry Winks on the roster, who is now with Leicester, I think. But he right. So he coached, that was right. We were after we fired Pochettino, Mourinho came in for a while. And then we fired him right before our what is it, our Carling Cup final
The
or
cup
whatever.
final. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
remember
and
that.
Ryan Mason coached us then. And then what was it? We had what's his name? Portuguese guy for a minute who's
Oh, Nuno.
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 Nuno,
Yeah.
and then Conte came in, and then we fired Conte, and Ryan Mason took over the last couple of months there too. So that was
Yeah.
before Ange came in. It was a mess, and then Ryan Mason he did coach with Ange, I think, for a year or two. I forget. Yeah.
Fair play. Brian, look, it's been great
Actually, we
chatting with
just
you.
got the Colorado team just got Spurs assistant coach Matt Wells, I think, is now the
Oh, right.
Colorado team's new head coach,
There
which
we
is
go.
terrific. So
Maybe you'll meet him one day. You never know.
I guess the owner of the Colorado team also owns Arsenal, so I try and stay
Oh
close.
no. Oh no. Fair enough. Well, look, it's been great chatting, Brian. Thanks for coming on the podcast today.
You too, Ben. Thank you
Um,
so much for inviting me. Yeah,
no, not at all. And obviously, have a great weekend and stay away from the snow if you can, top of the mountains. And yeah, we'll speak soon.
we'll do. Take care. Thanks so much again.
Bye,
Bye bye.
Brian. Take care.